Hey guys, it's History Behind the Warrior, and today we're going to be talking about the ways Onaga could return in the new timeline. Now in terms of time period, there is going to be quite a gap in when Onaga returns, so this video is definitely subject to change, as this video is more or less a complete theory at this point, since Onaga isn't really scheduled to appear in the next game, which would be Deadly Alliance. But here I'm going to be discussing all the information I currently know about Onaga, and the many possible ways he could be introduced to Mortal Kombat 11, or most likely Mortal Kombat 12. Of course, we are an extremely long time away from that. Now on that note, let me give you a quick background check on who Onaga is. Now after the war finished between the Elder Gods and the One Being, realms began to settle into their world, and naturally through this way people rose to power. One of these beings so happened to be Onaga, who became the ruler of Outworld. Now Onaga was an extremely powerful being. Understandably, being its ruler, he had some supernatural capabilities, one being his ability to literally revive anyone from the dead. There was no restrictions with this guy. He had the ability to bring back anyone, which made him an extremely powerful force to deal with. You see, Onaga had created this army that was more or less immortal, and it never lost a single fight. Why? Because when one of his soldiers would die in combat, he would instantly revive them on the spot. That means that he had no losses in combat. He needn't worry about having to feed his soldiers. It functioned like a tight machine, and he was the massive cog that had kept it going. And this meant that Outworld became a very formidable force. Now despite this, Onaga wasn't immortal, at least not yet. You see, Onaga was wise enough to see his limitation. Although he was an extremely powerful being, he knew that he could not beat time. So he would seek out and try to find a way of becoming immortal. And luckily for him, he learned of the solution. He had to drink the blood of an infant baby dragon. This would apparently grant him immortality. Now for those of you who don't know, actual dragons are extremely rare in the Mortal Kombat universe. There haven't been many in the terms of canon that have appeared. In fact, the only three that we currently know that exist within the universe is Onaga himself, alongside Orin and Karo. Now back on the topic of Onaga, before the dragon egg hatched, he was poisoned by his chief advisor, Shao Kahn, leaving the Dragon King to apparently die as he rose to become the new ruler of Outworld. Now when Onaga did die, his army followed suit and were left in a mummified state, and eventually as time passed by, Onaga's legend had simply become a myth and was to then be lost in time. Now of course this wasn't quite the end for the Dragon King, as he was able to manipulate Shigenko into assembling the Kamidogus so that way he could merge the realms upon his return. Now this is quite interesting, as Shigenko himself didn't bring back the Dragon King. Shigenko was just responsible for gathering the Kamidogu. You see, Onaga used that dragon egg that he wanted to use for immortality as a conduit for himself to be reborn into another being. The being that he used as a host was Reptile, and he was indeed successful in being reborn, although his somewhat return was very short-lived, as he would later be defeated by Shigenko and disappear sometime during the Battle of Armageddon, with his fate somewhat being unknown, but somewhat implied that he was somehow killed by Shao Kahn. Now with the birth of the new timeline, how does Onaga quite settle in here? As let's be honest here, there have been many alterations. Now first off, let's talk about the Kamidogus. In this universe, they have been vastly altered to their original counterpart. You see, whereas before they were just simple items of power, the Kamidogus in this universe seem to hold an extremely powerful magical property, with the ability to allow its wielder to become a blood god, something that we did see in the Mortal Kombat X comics. Now in comparison with the original Kamidogus, if you acquired all of the original ones, you would be able to merge all of the realms, and essentially the person who would merge all the realms would become the One Being. Now in the new timeline, from what we have seen, if someone is stabbed with all of these Kamidogus, they will become a blood god. So there are two massive changes here, and whether or not the Kamidogus will essentially be used later on for Onaga's return is extremely up in the air. Of course, you can bring along the original set of Kamidogus and discard the ones we've seen in the comics here, but by doing that it would seem like a bit of a missed opportunity and kind of a cop-out, because I think it would be really cool to see a blood god Onaga. So I will say the likelihood of Kamidogus returning in his story arc being somewhat slim, as they have to alter a lot of what they've already done. Now let's talk about Shigenko. Now Shigenko has made two appearances here, one in the comic books where he's manipulated by Havoc, in which he's guarding a Kamidogu, might I add, and making a cameo in Mortal Kombat X where he's pretty much beaten to death by Cassie Cage. Now I do want to let you guys know that in the new timeline, NRS seem to be killing a lot of the 3D era characters. So take what you will about Shigenko's beating we got in Mortal Kombat X, but I would like to let you guys know that there is a rather high chance that this may indeed have happened. Now like I mentioned earlier, Reptile was originally the conduit that Onaga had used, and this was due to the fact that Reptile was currently searching Outworld as he wished to find some someone to be loyal to, as in the original timeline he was more of a lackey than he was kind of a leader, and this led to him coming across the dragon egg and eventually being turned into the Dragon King. Now you see here in the new timeline, Reptile is extremely loyal to Kotal and is extremely happy as having him as his leader, so I don't quite see him leaving Kotal's side, as it seems like the character is extremely comfortable where he is, and I doubt they'll kill Kotal after introducing him in just like one game, and if that does happen, that's really dumb. So now from what you guys can see, there have been many alterations to the timeline, and it doesn't seem like Onaga quite fits into this anymore, but there are many solutions to this, and I will display a few ways here how Onaga can indeed return. But first, let's quickly talk about the relevancy of the Kamidogus. Now we'll just have it as this: Kamidogus are items of power. Whatever they do to a certain individual puts them at an extremely high power level, which means they'll be extremely difficult to battle, whether that be being turned into the one being or becoming a blood god. Now Sejenko can still be alive and collect these later on, but the character can indeed be killed off and instead be replaced with a new character that can be a servant for him in a later game, that being Mortal Kombat 11 or 12. So again, just a few ideas here and there. Now back on the topic of Onaga's return, like I mentioned a second ago, I don't quite see Reptile being turned into Onaga, but in fact someone that we've all kind of missed: Prince Goro, a character who was featured in Mortal Kombat X as a playable character, but in no way, shape or form actually played a part in the story. This is vastly due to what happened in the comics. Now I know a lot of you haven't read the comics, so I'm going to break it down here and let you guys know what has happened. Now during the comics there was a massive civil war with Outworld between Melina and Kotal. Goro had gotten involved and he had a battle with Kotal which ended extremely badly for him, resulting in all of his 4 arms being severed, and when he returned back home he was seen as a disgrace by his people. Now Goro wasn't happy with having just stubby arms, so he sought out to find the Red Dragon, who had information on the Dragon King Onaga, since Goro was interested in his regenerative abilities. So just through these hints alone, it seems like they might be using Goro to be the new host for the Dragon King, since he's already a Shokan, and Shokans are half human, half dragon. It seems like Goro will be the most likely candidate to become the new Dragon King, which is going to be extremely interesting if this is the case. Now there's not really much more I can add to this video in terms of story. I can only kind of point out the possibilities of how he may return, as it seems like the next game is going to be Deadly Alliance followed by Deception, and they're keeping information about Onaga extremely vague in this new timeline. And who knows, he might just decide to curb stomp people instead of acquiring these Kamidogus. Whether or not they'll be relevant anymore, or maybe a new plot device will come along that will allow him to become extremely powerful. I've just listed the many possibilities here for how he could return and once again become an extremely powerful threat towards the main cast. But yeah, hopefully this has given you guys some insight on how Onaga can return and the many little possibilities here and there. And this pretty much wraps up the video. And we do one of these Mortal Kombat theory videos each week, so feel free to post down in the comments below anything that you'd like me to talk about, as I'm more than happy to kind of put together a theory video that explains a lot about a certain character and their possibilities of returning, or maybe just some form of discussion which people want to know more about, like how Sub-Zero became normal Sub-Zero. Is Smoke actually in Triborg? Just general questions like that. Feel free to post down in the comments below. Now before we wrap up this video, if possible guys, let's try getting this video to roughly about 500 likes. It's a great way of supporting my channel, since YouTube's algorithm system is pretty much completely broken now. Now as always guys, please comment, like, subscribe and share this video with everyone you know. Please take care and I will see you all next time.